church. Somebody, a colleague of mine, said once that it was driving him nuts because he had 92 bosses. And it can. I mean, I will be honest with you. It can. But I also think that there is a tremendous amount of strength in it, and I hope I don't mess everything up for you in this. But I want to show a picture that popped up. Still there? Okay. I want to show a picture that popped up on my Facebook page, memory page today. And it's a group of a very small group of young people. At that point, I think I maybe had an 18-year-old in the midst. No, some of them are 16, even there. And they are standing outside barbed wire. The reason there is barbed wire is because the place where we were staying was, the owners of the place considered it dangerous. Anybody could break in. And they wanted us to be safe. This is our last moment there at the Harold Thomas Center in Kansas City. And what we had done is we had taken a youth group down to Kansas City so that we could work on a Habitat for Humanity project. Why did we go from northeast Nebraska to Kansas City to go find that? That is 26 years ago, my friends. When I popped up on my page, would you like a look? No, okay. When it popped up on my page, my first reaction was, yikes, it's been 26 years. Where has the time gone? And immediately one of the girls says, yikes is right. I look like I'm dressed to be behind those wires. Oh, Jessely, yeah, you were kind of glum that week. I don't know why. But here's the thing about this. This is not the mission trip I brag about. The one I brag about is the one where pretty much this group of people went off to New York City to work on a mission project feeding a homeless population just off of Washington Square Park. That's the one I brag about. This is the one that got us there. Because as I said when I originally posted this, our volunteer and mission work group at the Harold Thomas Center in Kansas City, June 2000. Yes, we lived that week behind barbed wire. We're dressed up because we are heading to church at Grand Avenue Temple, United Methodist Church, downtown Kansas City. And we didn't know it yet, but in just a couple of hours, we're going to have the 2002 work trip destination set for us. We had been doing cycles. Every 2 years we would do a mission trip somewhere. We'd gone several times to Minnesota. This was our first trip to Kansas City. We had another one coming up later on, as it turns out. But this one, we went to Grand Avenue Temple to worship, because part of what we did was we would go and worship in a congregation. We would be visiting, doing mission, and we would stay up until Sunday and then go to church. And we were told to go to Grand Avenue Temple. And somebody said, well, why should we do that? So I asked the person who recommended it, and they said, you just go. And that's where we discovered that the pastor there was serving a homeless congregation at Grand Avenue Temple. But she was being moved to New York City. And my kids, bless their hearts, they went downstairs. After worship service, they went downstairs. The homeless population had been in worship, about 100 people. And they went downstairs because there was a meal program, a feeding program going on. And my kids went downstairs too. Well, the adults, we stayed and listened to the pastor tell about what the church was like, how it worked, how they were off the books for the Methodists. The book of discipline had nothing that would handle that. Who is a member of that church? It's whoever shows up that day. She said she had 4 members of her church on death row. She said, I never know who's going to be here. The rules were, you could come in, you could bring your stuff, you could fall asleep, just don't lie down. But my kids went downstairs, the leadership and I were upstairs. We went downstairs because we knew that there were people from the church. There was a stable, landed, all-housed part of the church that were taking care of the meal. We went downstairs and we found our kids serving meals. We found our kids who came in and saw that there were only 2 grown-ups handling this food for 200 homeless people. And our kids said, we can't let that happen. We're serving. Sometimes ministry just goes. And the best way it happens is when we see the need and respond. So I want to keep that in mind as we take a look at our past and how they responded to a situation where things weren't working and they responded with creativity. And then I want to bring that also to our attention. So what does it mean to be a congregationally led church? Well, Christina, we may be about to find out. By the way, it was a 7-hour drive from Kansas City back to Creighton, Nebraska, and for the first hour, I heard, when can we go to New York? How do we get to New York? We got to go to New York. When can we get to New York? And then they fell asleep. And then 5 hours later, with 1 hour left to go, is, how can we get to New York? Can we make it work? What do we have to do to get to New York? Because we'd had the invitation. And I said, okay, we will work on it.
And then what happened in September?
Oh, the next September, I was getting ready to set up the finalization that we were definitely determining as a youth group to go to New York City and respond at 4th Avenue United Methodist Church. And that was meeting on September 12th, 2001. On September 11th, all hell broke loose. And my kids were witnesses to teachers breaking down and weeping. And they were witnesses to this news that kept rolling again and again and again and again. And no matter how often you watched it, it never came out different. And so my question, as I got into the youth group meeting on the 12th, was, do you still want to go? And their answer was, now more than ever. Their answer was, we saw people running away, and we saw people running too. And we want to be among the people who run too. My brothers and sisters in Christ, if we're not listening to our young people, we're missing out. So, with that in mind, what does it look like to be a congregationally led church? Well, I have another image here first. It's over here. And as I stand over here, I realize that this podium is just not at the right height. And it's kind of in the dark. And I can move it, except that it's really heavy. I don't know why we have such a heavy stand here. And it's not made for me. But this one can go anywhere. And I can turn it so the light is better. And if I'm not happy with that, guess what? This comes equipped. I can turn those lights on too. is pretty. Sometimes I don't need pretty and heavy. Sometimes I need flexible. Here's from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 5, beginning at verse 36. Jesus also told them a parable. No one tears a piece of a new garment and sews it on an old garment, otherwise the new will be torn. And the piece from the new is not going to match the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise the new wine will burst the skins and will be spilled, and the skins will be destroyed. But new wine must be put into fresh wineskins. May God bless us, and may God seal us within the Word today. About the time that I found out that I was going to have this assignment to talk about a congregationally led church, it was about the time I had a conversation with somebody who raised that issue, that image for me. And so I want to start out by talking about wineskins. You knew the professor and he was going to do that, didn't you? Okay. So what are wineskins? Well, they didn't have that many glass jars in Jesus' time. And if they did, they couldn't make very many of them. There was some glass things, but not like that. And clay jars just weren't going to cut it. And stone, you can't make too many of those. But skins, man, they had skins galore. They had sheep, they had cows, they had goats. They did all kinds of things with skins. They could scrape them down and use them for paper. They could use them to bundle up stuff. They could find ways of draping them over and using it as a jacket. Or, oddly enough, they found a way to pull them together so they could hold very large amounts of liquid. And here's the thing about wine. When you put new wine together, it's very fizzy. And it's actually expanding all the time. And there's that pressure going outwards as it grows and as it ferments and it releases that carbon dioxide. And I don't know what it would do with my carbon dioxide detector at school. It'd just be crazy. But it pushes out. But here's the thing, if you don't contain it, all of that's going to escape. And then it won't be wine, it will just be yuck. So you have to have the container there. And fermenting wine takes a good bit of time, too. I envision somebody looking at a skin of wine at a party and saying, "Oh, we're going to bring out the good year 2. That was a good year." But after a while, when it has been expanding a little bit and it's having that fermentation and those gases push out a little bit and then get contained within it, that skin becomes brittle. It's no longer a bag nearly as much as it is a goat-skinned, hard-shelled container. And so, when you open it up and you pour this wine out, now aged nicely, a nice vintage, what do you do with the next batch? Do you put it in the old container? And Jesus points out that that's a stupid thing to do. Did you know Jesus tells jokes? Yeah. And this is one. You don't put that in an old skin. Who would do a thing like that? Because you know what's going to happen. It's just that thing's brittle. And as the new wine keeps pushing out, it's going to break it apart. It's going to fall out, and then the whole thing will be done. And it'll all be a waste. Well,
this is what he's telling, is that you put new wine into old, or not new wine, put it into new wineskins. There are just times that you have to do that. And what he is saying, of course, is that his movement is a new thing going on. It is new wine. There's ferment going on there. Jesus walks into a room and he captures immediate attention. He gets people coming all over to come see him, to bring healing, to bring teaching. He goes off in the boat and sits or stands and gives his teaching while people sit on the shore because there's no house that will contain him. And what he's saying is that the old wineskins, the rabbis with their little studies, and the scribes with their little studies, and the synagogues that are good for what they do, but there is something new that is happening, and he's saying we need to have this new thing. So, my question, of course, is what do wineskins do? And wineskins do a couple of things. They contain, they hold it in, so that all of that carbon monoxide gets released in fermentation will stay put. But they also open. You cut it open, and you can pour it out. You have to be able to do both. You have to be able to both contain it and let the new wine do its thing. And then you have to be able to have access to the result. Okay? I mentioned this to Connie as I was preparing, and she said, there's a lot of containers in the New Testament, aren't there? Earthen vessels. Remember we had Paul saying we have this treasure in earthen vessels. There's that need for containment. There is that need for, well, using what's contained. Along about the 1940s and 50s, a crazy thing happened. There was a war. And against all the odds and all the indications in 1941 and 1942, the United States and the Allies managed to push back against an evil regime. And the question was, how did we do it? Well, how we did it was in part because all of the little people involved in the army had skills themselves. Germans would watch, after they were captured, they would watch a jeep break down. And they were astonished to discover that the person driving that jeep could open the hood and make some adjustments, and that jeep would be running again. Because in German army terms, that required that jeep to be, or vehicle to be shipped back to somebody who could fix it. Now here, farm boys who grew up taking care of tractors knew how to handle a tractor. They knew how to handle an engine. So that was one way that this happened. Congregational led, right? The other thing that happened, though, was that there was a whole lot of preparation that needed to be done. And so the idea was that you needed to have, how do I put it? You needed to have governance to make sure you had drivers for those jeeps. But you also needed to have committees. You would break down a task and you would give each committee a separate task. And I can't even begin to list for you the number of committees for D-Day. It was just phenomenal. That worked as long as you had the people on the ground to make it work. When it didn't work, when things broke down, it was usually a matter because the committees had a little bit of trouble figuring out what it was they were doing. Well, what happened in the 40s and 50s was that this is an age, a generation grew up and said, this is the way in which you organize things. When I was growing up in the First Christian Church in Spencer, Iowa, I was on a committee. I was on the evangelism committee. There was the evangelism committee. There was the stewardship committee. There were a host of there was a world mission committee. There was all kinds of committees. We had about 6 or 7, and every board meeting was a 2-hour thing, because the first hour was taken up with the committee's meeting, and we would all meet at the same time. We were a big enough church, nobody served on 2 committees simultaneously. And then we would get together at the board to talk about it. And if a problem came up within the life of the church, well, what happened is that you gave it to the appropriate committee. That was the way it worked. That was all I ever knew. It was the way it worked. It was when I was in seminary, that was the way that we were taught that churches were organized. Was that you had the governance, you had those who were involved in taking care and making sure the building was taken care of. You had people who were taking sure that the finances were taken care of. You had people who would make sure that we had everybody lined up, deacons to prepare the communion and elders to serve at the table, and deacons, we had a worship committee that would make sure that those things would take place. And everybody, if you had something come up, it had to go down to the committee. If that were the case, with my young people coming out of Kansas City and looking at going to New York, what would we have done? We'd have gotten to the youth committee. And the youth committee would have asked for permission to go. Which, by the way, on September 13th, I wasn't sure we had permission from parents. Grandparents were upset to think that we were talking about going to New York. We would have the youth committee have to sit there and come up with a proposal. We would have passed it along up to the World Outreach Committee because they were involved in doing some kind of mission work around the world. Maybe we would have somebody with a Homeland Mission connecting with the Department of Board of Homeland Missions for the general church. Then maybe they would have to have their way in on all of this. And by the time we would have gotten done with it, 2002 would have come and gone, and we wouldn't have. The assumption was, in the 40s and 50s, that the way you organize a war, the way you organize a government, the way you organize a church is the same. And it may not be. It may be that the wine has changed. When I was growing up, again, 50, 60 years ago, the assumption was that we would be a youth church. That if we did anything in church, it would be a youth thing. So, which meant, oddly enough, that not everybody had to be in church for Youth Sunday. Because it's just a youth thing. And then the Jesus movement kind of came through. And we were a part, the youth group that I was in, we were a part of people who would get together and, one of the Lutheran churches wants to do Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So we would go over there and we would do that. We didn't ask committee permission for that. And there were some times when there was a rally we wanted to have at the county fairgrounds, which, by the way, in Spencer, Iowa, is bigger than the Iowa State Fair. Connie objects to that. It is true. It is true. And hey, Bob Hope did not make the state fair that year, but he did come to Spencer. But we had a rally at the fairgrounds. And that, you know, we used no church money. By the way, this trip to New York City used no church money. None. We raised it. We worked diligently to raise it. But we got it without going into the church budget. Sometimes we have to pay attention to whether or not the wine is changing. And so, what I think congregationally led means is that there are times we may take a look at a structure that we have inherited and say, there are some things that we need to do slightly differently. And that's why I am a fan of congregational-led churches. Because I tell you, the ability to adapt is also there. Which means that I have two questions, and this is where you all get to be part of the conversation. What are the things that are essential to keep? And what is the vision for a slightly different skin? What are the essentials that we get to keep? What are the things that might possibly be new ways of thinking about containing that wine? Because remember, and it grieves my heart to do this because we as a youth group kept bucking up against and saying, why are you trying to contain us? Why are you trying to contain our enthusiasm? And the correct answer would have been, because uncontained wine goes flat. So what are the essentials to keep? Remember all the values that we had. We talked about disciple stuff. We talked about disciple history. What are the kinds of things we need to feel essential to keep?
The centrality of the Bible.
Okay. Which means that every time I say I read that in a book somewhere, you all have to know which book I'm talking about, right? Okay. Yes?
Can you repeat what she said?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. She said the centrality of the Bible.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, we need to keep that front and center. Okay? Anybody else? Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same thing. I was going to say Jesus-centered.
Jesus-centered. Okay. We're going to get even more specific there. We're going to keep Jesus in mind. Okay? That makes sense. You can be Bible-centered and have to do a Seder all the time. Keep kosher. Which Jesus, of course, suggests is not necessary. What else? What other things would be essential to keep? Oh, you all are just so quiet. Yeah?
To remain prophetic, responsive to the needs of the community and the world around us.
Okay, I'm going to put prophetic here, and I'm going to put responsive here.
Okay.
Okay. What else?
I may have all of this wrong. When I was brought up in church, the way we have church here,
Mhm.
it was taboo. The pastor was the shepherd, and God holds him accountable for the sheep.
Mhm.
But here, the people here have a say and have a way. And
Okay.
then he's down here. And I'm personally having a difficult time with that because I see him, I see my pastor as the head leader
Mhm.
of the church. But at this church, it's my First Disciples church.
Mhm.
It's not that way. Are we doing wrong? Because God is going to hold him accountable. But yet, we don't have to listen to him. It's a congregational thing. Oh, yes, you do have to listen to him. God chose him, and we are to listen to how the Lord has given him things to help lead us. I think I struggle with that.
Okay.
I have old-fashioned values,
Mhm.
but in my estimation, in my idea of things, he's the leader. That's it, that's all.
Okay.
God has given him the say and the way,
Okay.
not us.
That's not for a golden calf up there.
It's not a golden calf?
That's a golden calf. When you have somebody you want, if you want somebody to lead you,
Mhm.
it's never your input. Where's he gonna take you? He's gonna take you where he wants you to
Okay.
go, not where you want to
So the conversation here is the pastor is central, pastor is the leader, and on the other hand, that it is, you're pushing against that, Russell.
go. Yes, the pastor is a
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah.
He's not somebody that's gonna, he can lead people that have ideas that are completely contrary
Okay.
to the group. And with enough power, they will lead, I've seen them work in church. And they lead on it.
Yeah.
They lead one half this way and one half up the door the other way.
Let me get the actual pastor first here, and then I'll come back to you.
You know, Daphne, to recognize what you said, I understand that struggle because I came out of to your reference to the struggle, I came out of a very similar tradition where, you know, the top of the food chain were pastors. But I've also, over years, I've come also to understand that there is quite a diversity of traditions on how churches are led and governed. So if we were Methodist, your pastor is basically led by the group that they're, what is it,
The cabinet, the bishop, or
They're
the bishop,
cabinet,
or the
they're
district
bishop.
superintendents.
It's almost like their superintendent runs your church, not your pastor. And if they decide to move your pastor, he's gone.
Yep.
No say, neither does the congregation have a say in that. That's one example. And so this is one unique example where you have to have a unique pastor and you have to have a unique congregation. A pastor is one who feels like his role doesn't necessarily have to be run with the iron fist and the velvet glove, while at the same time a congregation that realizes our job isn't to walk over, but our job is to co-lead and work together. And to be quite honest with you, struggle like what you're describing and what we're talking about today, it is good and it is welcomed.
Okay. Thank you. Carolyn?
I think that historical significances are key to keeping, because if you know where you've been, then you will know where you're going. Historical significances should be there to keep.
Okay.
And I too would say, not congregation-led. I'm used to boards keeping the rules of how it should be, and groups of people, but not the whole congregation.
Okay. Go ahead. Kathy will...
Oh, I'm sorry. What I'm hearing is that we want to keep some pastoral authority. But maybe I mean, a part of the priesthood of all believers is that the pastor is a pastor among pastors, a minister among ministers. And so I think it could be both and.
Kathy?
Yeah. See if I can speak into this. Okay. From my limited knowledge and have been both a Baptist and in Catholic and involved with the Catholic Church and disciples of Christ, no matter what church you go into, the pastor is still the spiritual leader of the congregation. So he's still an ex facto member of every ministry here. So you follow his directive. But in each church, the congregation is still who leads the church, because I've seen pastors replaced in baptisms by deacons, and so it is still, each church is still, the congregation is what their vision is. And each one, we've had these meetings and decided what our vision was and gone, but the head of the church is still God, no matter what church you're in.
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments. Anybody else?
Christina.
Oh, Christina, I'm sorry.
I see here actually that struggle, because perhaps some of us who are new, who've come from traditions where the pastor is the head, and then you're trying to understand what it means to be a congregationally led church, and then again, as I mentioned before, then it becomes about accountability, because when things don't go right, it's easy for either a person in that role, the pastor or whoever, to say, it always can be passed along to somebody else, and eventually to the congregation. So I think that I feel like one of the things in getting things done here particularly is feeling that struggle that the congregation hasn't decided. Like, even when you hear how strong Daphne is saying that to me is somebody who's not in agreement with the congregationally led church. So now it's not, and I find that in many of the congregation.
Can I make a suggestion? Oh, we're gonna get Russell here. Okay.
And when you go on a Bible search committee, not a Bible search, but minister search committee, you have people with a variety of ideas, and you're picking the man you want to lead you in the debate. Okay, so when you finally come to a conclusion that this is the man that you want to be in there, and he comes in here, and this is giving you a prime example. And the first thing, not right off the bat, you knew that he was going to lead us, all right, but he was going to lead us all out the door and relocate the church. And that happened with number one and this one. He never got the job, but he was preaching around, and when you think of government, you think of the church as a government. And there's people that seek power, whether they're the elders of the church who seek power, but they don't have it. But this is the thing that breaks the church. They get little cliques going, and that's what you have to watch out for.
And that's one of the breaking points of wineskins.
That's right.
Yeah. Anybody else? Because this is actually a good conversation. Maybe all of you can join Bible study on Wednesday so we can have good conversations. Let me make a suggestion, just slightly to change the image for a moment. What's that word pastor come from? Shepherd. Okay, in fact, Daphne used the word shepherd. Where do you want your shepherd to be?
Where you want to be.
Yeah. I've actually had a friend of mine in elementary school who was a shepherd. They kept sheep. Where do you want the shepherd to be?
Well, he certainly is not going to be at the head of
In the center of the flock.
that all the time.
You want the pastor to, you want the shepherd to be with the flock.
And I always like to talk about people having a parade.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going for a walk, there's a lot of people, that's a parade. If you're going for- you think it's a parade, there's no one behind you, that's not a parade.
The line that needs to be recorded is if you go for a walk and there are a lot of people behind you, that's a parade. Okay. And I think what maybe we're kind of circling around here is to understand that the pastor is a shepherd, even in a congregationally led church, maybe especially so. But that also, when that leadership takes place, we definitely have to watch out to make sure that that vision is owned. Does that make sense? That without it, I don't think
Just repeat what you said. The vision is what?
owned.
Okay, thank you.
It is owned by the congregation. What actually made the New York trip possible was that the question of ownership began to filter out. As I told the story about our kids wanting to go be part of the solution and not run away from it. And I watched people gradually come along to join into that. We didn't spend anything from the church budget, but we had people generously buy shares in our corporation in order to make that trip possible. And it wouldn't have done. It wouldn't have gone if we had not had that kind of ownership from the rest of the congregation. And yes, that was, by the way, a weird cross between a congregational, sort of congregationalist church and a bishop-run Methodist church. But what we needed to do is we needed to find ways of bringing people on board. And that may be, in fact, how do I say that? How do we bring ownership? Okay. Are there other things that we need to keep? I'm kind of going to put leadership in the pastor and congregation in the middle, because I think there are elements in there that go both ways. That there are things that we cannot simply have a decision that is made that the ownership is not there also with the whole congregation. Likewise, we cannot have a congregation that says, you don't know nothing. We can't follow that. If that's the case, we got a whole different issue.
I think two things that we need to keep is, one, the priesthood of all believers.
Ah ha ha! Thank you.
What did she say?
To keep the priesthood of all believers.
Priesthood of all believers. I'm sorry, that's a long phrase. I just initialed it. Priesthood of all believers. Martin Luther actually originated that, and he really did mean at the time that anybody in the church could hear anybody else's confession. That's the setting in which he first used that phrase. The priesthood of all believers is worth keeping. Thank you. That was one.
The second thing, when I think of a congregationally led church, that seems more important than a church where it's personality driven by a pastor, that's drawn by the personality of a pastor, is really the congregation actually being welcoming and receiving, because if you have one leader, okay, then people will just follow that person and do what they say. But if if you're looking for your people to lead, then it's actually really important for the other members to be welcoming to the people who are coming, because otherwise you might feel welcome to be here, but then when you try to do something and step into that, then people are like, we didn't ask, you're trying to change things, or you're not one of us, or then you feel, but when people are actually welcoming of the gifts, then people will actually feel like, okay, I came here because I love children and I want to do this, or I came here. But otherwise, with the pastor, they can just say, well, Connie's going to do that, doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if I'm supportive of Connie. But in this church, it's actually important. Because it'll make you feel like, well, I'm part of the congregation, but I'm not. I want to do something, but no, they don't really want me to. If they don't really they want me to do it, but they don't really like me. You can come to the meeting. No, you're not really a staff person. Why are you at the meeting? All kind of it matters more how the congregation interacts with you here than it does at a personality.
Yes, it does, absolutely. When I was in college, the Central Christian Church in Enid, Oklahoma, had a bus that would come to campus, which is 2 miles away. A Good Disciple College, by the way, and they would bring the campus kids over, and we would have this youth group that they would gather together every Sunday night, and they were welcome at the worship service. And then they took us on a tour. And they took us on a tour through the hallways, and we would look into these classrooms and say, here's this classroom, and it's locked. And we come in, this classroom was locked. And here's the parlor. This is the women's fellowship parlor. And it's locked. And by the way, don't ever try to get in it. And then they took us down the stairs and through the furnace room and under all of the tubes and pipes that served the sanctuary, and that was the youth room. So my question is, what was the message that was being given? We have to watch the message. So I'm trying to watch for time here too. I apologize for this. What other things should we keep? What other things do we need that are new? And the only reason I put welcoming here is because we're really good at welcoming people in. We're not really good at welcoming them in.
We want to keep the ministry of food.
Ah! We want to keep the ministry of food. I love it. We're a food church. What else? I'm going to ask a question. Do we keep weekly communion?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Partly that's because it's food. No, yeah, but you know what I mean. The food is an important ministry. Okay, do we want to keep baptism by immersion?
Yes.
Keep what?
Baptism by immersion.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, the sacraments. Or the ordinances. I'm sorry. Yes, I just used a Catholic term for ordinances. Ordinances. Okay, we want to keep that.
Diversity.
Diversity. That actually is a question. Well, it is a question I have asked. I am pleased to hear somebody else mention it. The question that I asked in a couple of places was, is it important to have a church that is diverse? And part of me says, oh, Lord, that is hard to sell. And part of me says, it needs selling more than ever. That's part of our prophetic.
It depends if the church diversity and combine click together. That's good.
It may be good even if it doesn't. Funniest thing?
They'll find that out too.
Yeah, that too.
Where are we going to put worship?
Where are we gonna put worship?
Bible Center, Jesus, that's where the worship should be.
Okay. What, can you say a little bit more?
What? I love the way we worship. Because it's what I know, but I also know that if we are looking at welcoming new people, when it comes to music,
Yes.
younger people like music that you can feel. I like music that I can, but there is a difference. And I think that, okay, so you put them on both sides.
That's because Jackie was going like this.
But I think that there are things about worship that we need to figure out what we keep and what we want new, or how we combine the two.
What if the new music is a thing that's attracting them?
It may be.
Everything on the outside, if that's the music we hear day by day, that's an attraction. And all every time people play one of these churches, we've got a big parking lot. I tell her, that's an entertainment church. Sure enough it is. Singers and the bands and the whole shop. That's not what I want.
Yeah.
The majority of people do want that.
Yeah.
So
What Russ is saying is that music can be attractive, and that it can draw people in, and participation in music, by the way.
But he also said that it can also just become entertainment.
That's always a question, isn't it? Always a question, and it's going to be no matter how you frame worship.
Traditional worship can become entertainment.
Yeah, traditional worship itself can become the thing that we keep that may be a brittle part of the wineskin. Anybody else? How about this? Under responsive, how about nimble? Nimble.
Oh, nimble.
are you talking about a symbol?
About what?
I know what you're talking
Okay. Love's Table. Love's Table, we had an emergency in front of us. And and the response was, we need to do this. That's nimble. My youth, the need was there. Not only in New York City, but also in my youth, as it turns out. And they had the answer. We spent 2 years working on it, but the decision was basically made in May of 2000, 2 years before. They were responding quickly. What other things might be new? Yes?
Stewardship and evangelism.
Yeah! I'm willing to think of that. Now, what might happen, because I will tell you from that experience back in the 70s, is that evangelism committee basically didn't do anything. But if we had found something that would be different, actually what was working was the fact that I had high school friends who were wanting to know what on earth was going on out at this church, and so they would come in and visit. Who knew that the youth could be themselves the evangelists? Who knew? Stewardship. Oh, that has a lot to do with ownership, doesn't it? Oh dear. Okay. Well, once again, I'm thinking this has probably not done anything that you wanted it to do. But I think we need to kind of take a moment to move on because we're going to run out of time.
And I think next is our pastor, who's writing furiously, or frantically anyway.
It's not bad.
Let me ask a quick question though. Has any of this been fruitful?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. I think part of where we are is we are in the midst of trying to figure out what to do with some new wine. And we are dealing with situations and circumstances that have changed. And the old wineskin may just be brittle. Yes, Jackie?
I think it's important that as we consider the new, that we add in there, under maybe responsibility, under however we want to frame it, care for our cover ears, our seniors.
Seasoned Christians.
There you go.
Okay. Kathy was going to say.
No, I was just gonna say that's everybody, but.
That's everybody. There's a lot of us.
And the other category you don't have is what we give up. It's what we keep, what's new.
Ah.
But somewhere in there are things that we
There
have
are
to
things
give
that
up.
we have to give up, such as.
Well, I think with worship, it could be that predictable worship that people like me are comfortable with.
Ah.
Or the music that I grew up singing that I think is new.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah, Pass It On is over 50
Yeah,
years old.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But I just.
Yeah.
I just want to say two things that I don't know exactly where everybody would say these might be. But one is prayer.
Oh, we definitely want to keep prayer, don't
Or do we want to do it now?
we? Or do we want to do it?
Both.
Jackie may have the
It's in
idea.
every area.
That's both.
Both.
It's both.
And the other one, which to me actually goes along with that, is the youth. Because I've heard so much of the prayers about the youth. But again, in this indicative in this setting, I've heard so many people talk about the youth, the youth, the youth. But even now, it wasn't,
now listed, is it?
it's never brought up in the board meeting.
And that
It's never brought, it's
tells us something, doesn't it?
incredibly.
That, where is it? Welcoming is something we need to work on.
Or prayer, because we pray for the youth, and then when they come,
And what about
or
prophetic?
whatever we pray for, then we also have to be ready to receive it.
And what about prophetic evangelism? Because if we really live and hear God, you know that these kids are being trained for the future.
Yeah.
They're gonna take care of these old folks one day. They're gonna have to look out for the old, but they may be the future leadership for pastors, teachers, and evangelists is what they are. They learned it from church,
Yeah.
as you. They learned that caring from church.
Yeah. Caring, training. Ooh. There was something else that popped into my head and it's gone through. I gotta tell you, I have not a brain, I have a sieve.
Thank you, Elder Ken. Thank you for giving us so much to think about.